about the winners and losers coming out of the Senior Bowl. All right, gents? So
Do
let's
it.
get into it. All right. And if you want to follow along with us, obviously you have the video here, the visual. But Headley has done a couple posts here at Couch Potato General Manager. Actually, it's couchpotatogm.com, the website. And he broke down the winners and losers from the Senior Bowl by each team. So you have the national team and the American team. And we're going to start with the national team, Headley. And
Yeah.
right at the top of your list, you see those three names. Dion Henley, a guy that you were really intrigued with going into the Senior Bowl. You felt like he had a lot to prove. He actually proved it, as well as Jaden Reed and Jacorian Bennett, defensive back from Maryland. Your thoughts on those players, Headley?
Yeah, I thought Henley proved a lot in terms of pass coverage, being able to rush the quarterback, elude running backs blocks. He just moves really well. The thing he has to clean up is more anticipation, especially in the run game. He could jump a hole wrong or not take on a block. But as far as athleticism go, I think Henley proved a lot in this Senior Bowl. Also, Jaden Reed, man, I think he's a smaller guy, but he plays bigger than his size. Attacking football in the air, excellent route runner. I love Jaden Reed's game. Jacorian Bennett, man, he's been in and out of hit pockets all practices. I think he got an interception in the actual game. So this is a guy that stays
Yeah, he
really close
sealed
to
it.
receivers. Yeah.
Hmm.
hmm
Yeah. Of those three players, Drew, who do you think helped themselves the most?
Forgot I had myself on mute, man.
Got on mute.
Where is it at? Where is it at? Out of those three players,
Yeah.
dang, bro, it's tight. It's between Jaden Reed and Jacorian Bennett. I'm probably gonna go with Jacorian Bennett over Jaden Reed. It's close though, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Jacorian Bennett, man.
All right. All right. You could probably see the name peaking there. A guy that I think was very, very impressive.
Should have been at the top, bro. I don't know why he wasn't at the top.
Probably should have been at the
Oh,
top if that
I
was.
did it by number order. It was
You
by
did,
the
you did it
numbers
by
they
number
wore in
order. You just
practice.
went down the
Yeah.
roster. I hear you, no
Yeah.
problem. Michael
Yeah.
Wilson, receiver from Stanford. I mean, he was incredibly impressive. He carried it through the practices into the game. There's going to be some content, some specific Michael Wilson content coming out on the YouTube channel. So stay tuned for that. Wanted to shout out some of our viewers here. What's going on, Mike? Appreciate you. One above all, always good to see you. And Bills are
So
electric, man. Love to see you guys here rocking with
yeah.
us on the second half draft show. So, Drew, a little bit in terms of your impression of Michael Wilson. You actually got an opportunity to interview him. And again, that interview will be up this weekend on the YouTube channel. What were your thoughts about what you saw on the field? And then, of course, the conversation you had with him?
So I'm gonna say this, man. Going into the Senior Bowl, I was trying to get to every player, right? It's just, and there's players that end up not going or not end up participating. So obviously, I didn't get through the list. He was one of the guys I didn't even get to, and I didn't know, down there talking to him, I didn't realize he was injured. Or he missed more games than he actually played in college, which is crazy. And he just told us, hey, listen, coaches, NFL execs, agents, they just want to see. They want to see me play, and what I look like, against competition to stay healthy. And he did that. And he surprised a lot of people with his ability to run routes. I mean, listen, that may be the most important thing outside of catching the football as a receiver is to be able to run routes and create separation. And he does it in a bevy of ways with nuance, subtlety, with speed. He's got all the tools in the tool shed to be the receiver that you want. Receiver one, slot receiver, doesn't really matter. He is. I'm not saying he's receiver one. I'm saying what I saw was receiver one work he was doing at the Senior Bowl. That was beautiful, and he's an intellectual player. He looks at things different than most players that we talk to at the Senior Bowl.
Ellie, your impression of Michael Wilson. Again, you were there with Drew when you got an opportunity to speak to him on the field. What were your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Just like Drew said, speaking to him, man, he's a very smart individual. He went to Stanford, so that might have gave it away a little bit. But just his detail to the game, man. He was talking about,
Attention to detail. Yeah.
He talking about going to high school and watching film there and what they improved upon from high school to college. That's deep, man. And to make it at the next level, film work is one of the most important things because some guys get there just on talent. You're just better than everyone, but the guys that study the game and try to get better every day, those are the guys that last 10, 15 years in the league. So I like Michael Wilson a lot, man. The twitchiness in his route running, it really jumped out to me at the Senior Bowl.
It's impressive because he has good size. He's not a slot guy. You know what I'm saying? I'm
Mhm.
not suggesting that he can't play from the slot, but
Right.
he has, X stature in terms of physical stature. You understand what I'm saying? So seeing him come out of those breaks and really get the, cornerbacks to kind of open up their hips and sell that 9 route, and stack defensive backs when he does go vertical, it was really impressive. Just hope that he stays healthy. I think that's going to be the main thing as part of his evaluation is the medicals when they go to the combine and see exactly, what they're dealing with. Drew alluded to it. Um, he just hasn't been on the field. You know what I mean? What little tape is available of him is good, and it's part of the reason why he got his invitation to the Senior Bowl. And again, he took advantage of his opportunity there, but certainly he just hasn't played a lot of games due to injury over the last few seasons. All right, let's move on. Got a handful of players here, Headley, that you really liked, and certainly we would agree with you. Ivan Pace, the linebacker from Cincinnati, really demonstrated his ability to get after the passer. Carl Brooks, he's actually considered the biggest scouting combine snub, according to Jim Nagy. Caillou Blue Kelly, there were some concerns about long speed and his ability to hold up in man-to-man coverage. Assuming he wasn't able to get his hands on you, I thought he helped himself. He played well. He showed some improvement. And then Sidney Brown, he was one of my favorites from the Senior Bowl. Just, consistency. You can see him on this rep right here, matched up against the tight end. Didn't matter. He's giving up some size, but he's exactly where he's supposed to be. Plays with physicality and smart. So really impressive. He was actually the better of the two Chase brothers. And then your guy, Jalen Duncan, Headley. He looked like he belonged. I mean, obviously he looks like he belongs, but he certainly played like he belonged. What were your impressions of Jalen Duncan specifically?
Excellent movement ability, and we knew this, but what he improved upon that I saw at the Senior Bowl was that anchor. Guys wasn't really going through him. He was just so consistent, especially when he was at the left tackle position. I know they tried him at right tackle a couple times, but he just won those one-on-one matchups every time, and it was pretty impressive to me because those one-on-one matchups, you think the tackle will get beat a couple times, and it just more set up for defensive players, I think. But he held his own time after time, so I think his stock is up after the Senior Bowl.
So among these 5 players here, Drew, any one or two that really stood out to you while we were in Mobile?
Yeah. Dang, might have to go through everybody here, bro, because they all
No,
stood out.
they all stood out, but it's a
One or two.
superlative. I'm asking, yes, 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Got to stick to the game plan. I'm gonna go Sidney Brown and Ivan Pace. Sidney Brown, I coined him as he's a crash dummy.
Right.
He's just gonna run in there, make plays. He's just gonna cause disruption, and he was all over the field, whether it was in coverage or whether it was coming downhill making plays. And then Ivan Pace is a teleporter, bro.
Yeah.
He just finds ball, go gets ball, and I actually think this guy is an outstanding pass rusher, and whoever drafts him. Not saying he can't play linebacker because I believe he can do it, but I think if you're going to use him, if you're going to draft him, especially if you're going to draft him higher than maybe some people feel he should go because of his size, because that was something that we did talk about in terms of what the NFL execs, coaches, and stuff were doubting about him was his size. Yeah, his size ain't a problem for me, bro. The way he plays his size is almost irrelevant. And he's coming off the edge, screaming off the edge. He's got pass rush moves. This is a refined pass rusher coming off the edge if that's what you plan on doing with him.
Yeah, just a little undersized. It's a matter of how you could deploy him because the skill set is absolutely there. And like you said, there are several players from the Senior Bowl that may not necessarily check the boxes as far as size is concerned, but the skill set is in place. And I must say, I'm pushing anybody who can affect the passer further up my board. At the end of the day, on the defensive side of the ball, if you can affect the passer, there's so many teams in the NFL that cannot get a consistent pass rush. You understand what I'm saying? And they don't have a chance. Not in this passing league, not when you really can't affect the passer by hitting him too much, right? You know what I'm saying? And then of course, your inability to really get physical with the receivers downfield. So yeah, Ivan Pace, he really stood out to me as well. I agree with you there. Drew, you mentioned Sidney Brown as far as him being a crash dummy. I thought he played with a lot of control. It was fast. It was fast and violent. It was fast and violent.
I meant to say, watching the tape before the Senior Bowl was a crash test dummy coming downhill. Just, I need you to come under control. When he came to the Senior Bowl, all that almost like it never existed. And he was clean. I would say that. And
Yeah, definitely. Mike asked this question here: is it true Carl Brooks played some stand-up DN at 300 pounds in college?
bro, they did a
Yeah,
bunch of stuff with
absolutely
that guy,
true.
bro.
This
Yeah,
man, seven
yeah, he's
technique,
everything, bro.
5, 4,
Yeah,
3. He was all over
Wide
that
nine.
damn
It,
body.
it
pick a
didn't matter.
number,
It
pick a
didn't
number.
matter.
He played it all, bro. It was ridiculous.
Stand up. Yeah, he did it all.
And then our guy Derek said, "Love Carl Brooks. Pace could be a nice Swiss Army knife." No, Derek's a Seahawk fan. I believe he's a Seahawk fan. Yes, he is. I think Ivan Pace actually would be a good fit. You know what I'm saying? Next to Jordan Brooks
Hmm.
and the ability to affect the pass, because of course Seattle needs to improve their pass rush. I think that actually would be a good landing spot for Ivan Pace. All right,
And
let's
more respect need
continue
to be
on.
on Pace's name too, man.
Yeah.
I've been seeing some top 5 linebackers, and he's not on there. I think he should be on there.
All right. Okay, before we get to the Senior Bowl losers, we have a few more winners here from the national team. We got Dawan Jones, 1 day, and he was done. Payne Durham, I thought he was really impressive, particularly that last practice and in the game. He really came alive, made plays in the red zone. And then I'm gonna defer to you, Drew.
At a
I'm gonna defer
Tomaway.
to you. Say it one more time.
At a Tomaway.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. The interior defensive lineman from Northwestern. You guys actually had an opportunity to interview him as well. That will be on the channel here soon. What did he have to say about the doubts about his size once again?
Dominant, bro. It didn't matter. And he uses that size because he's not that tall to his advantage in terms of leverage, and you could see it almost every snap. And if he wasn't winning, whoever he was going against, he gave them problems. So,
Jared Patterson.
yeah, that wasn't fair, bro. Yeah, that was ugly. That's the kind of guy Jared Patterson doesn't want to face,
Right.
right? That's just a mismatch all day. But yeah, I mean, he dominated. He had a good week of practice. I love watching this game. I'm thinking about Northwestern. Like, okay, what you got? Yeah, he got it, bro. He got it.
All right, so we move on to the Senior Bowl losers, and right at the top, Headley has your guy, Drew.
No, it's Thomas Incoom. That's who I see.
No. You see the
Not
right
he.
name. You
Yeah.
see that name right there, Jaron Hall.
Yeah.
So Drew has been touting Jaron Hall. Obviously, there's a lot to like about his film. So,
Yeah.
even though he didn't necessarily help himself at the Senior Bowl, I think he's still an intriguing prospect. But any, idea that he might be an outside shot of, being towards the bottom of the first round or early day 2, I think that has gone by the wayside. And even Jim Nagy indicated, he said that we don't have a first round quarterback this year attending the Senior Bowl.
He was
You know
talking
what I mean?
fourth, fifth round for any quarterback that they had
Yeah.
on the roster.
Day 3.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, as far as his performance, Drew, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to kind of speak to it. What was the issue? Why didn't Jaron Hall help himself? I thought this was a prime opportunity, particularly without Will Levis attending, Malik Hooker being
Right.
hurt. Thought this was a great opportunity. He just didn't capitalize.
He didn't look comfortable, man. And usually, for quarterbacks specifically on the first day, I usually expect that. Not comfortable with the guys they're playing with, not comfortable entirely with the playbook. Coaches yelling at him, talking to him, just different things going on, and a lot of things they have to carry in terms of being that one of the quarterbacks there. And he didn't. It just didn't work well for him, and he didn't improve. He looked the same from day 1 to day 2 to day 3, maybe slightly, but he wouldn't let go of the football. And what does that tell you? He's not seeing things well, and then at the end of the day, he didn't play because sometimes, guys play bad during the week and then they play in the game and they, but he ended up not playing in the game, for whatever reason. I did a little research. Don't know if it's true or not. So don't hold me to it. Take it as a grain of salt, but they're talking about maybe he was injured. Him and I can't think it was Wicks that left.
Wicks, yeah.
Yeah, they left, and there's still no word on in terms of why they left. And if anybody has it, throw it up in the comment section, let us know. But yeah, it's unfortunate, man. Maybe he was injured. Maybe he was injured the entire time. Nobody knew. He didn't say anything outside of some of the coaches and Jim Nagy knowing, and he was just trying to see what he could do with why he was there, trying to boost the stock, but it didn't work.
You mentioned him not playing in the game, and again, we don't necessarily know why he opted out of playing in the actual game, considering that he didn't necessarily, again, really take advantage of the opportunity during the practices. A player that comes to mind is Isaiah Land, the edge from FAMU. He was being played in different spots, off the ball linebacker, just kind of looking, kind of feeling things out, and he wasn't playing fast. You know what I'm saying? And then you could see that he was thinking. You know what I mean? And he wasn't able to let his natural ability kind of take over. And then we get into the game and he looks like a different player altogether. You know what I'm saying? And I think he really helped himself by playing in the game. I know there isn't as much emphasis placed on these games because you have guys that are opting out and so on and so forth. But, you know, to start the week off rough, it was bumpy and then ended on a strong point, I think is a good sign. I think Isaiah Land benefited from attending, even though he didn't have a great, you know, few days of practice. And then, like I said, when the bullets actually started to fly, he played very well. So missed opportunity for Jaron Hall. The rest of the losers here, Headley, you got Thomas Incoom from Central Michigan, Ronnie Hickman from Ohio State, Andre Carter. I'll speak to Carter, and I'm going to give you guys opportunity to speak to it as well. I thought, you know, he has the length, and he doesn't use it effectively. And there's some issues in terms of functional strength. You know, he looked like he just wasn't strong enough when facing some of those tackles during the one-on-ones, you know, during inside run, during 11 on 11. I think, you know, when we got to 11 on 11, he was a little bit better, but, you know, you put him on the edge and you give him a one-on-one opportunity, you're expecting him to be able to affect the passer, right? That's what we were talking about right at the top. And he was getting enveloped by the offensive lineman. You know what I'm saying? Again, he didn't necessarily use his length to his advantage. Didn't look like he had the burst to really turn that edge, the fluidity to turn that edge. And again, you know, the bull rush was non-existent. So Headley, you know, you also have Jake Andrews, Elijah Higgins here. Let's talk about Carter, and then you can touch on some of the other guys that you felt really didn't necessarily help themselves.
Yeah, Andre Carter, I think you laid everything out there. He just the strength in his game just wasn't there. He get to play against the upper echelon of competition because that's the biggest thing with guys, from Army or guys that's not in the Power Five is let's see how they compete against the top level guys, and we saw it, and like you said, it wasn't good. So I had to put him on the losers list. Another guy, Elijah Higgins from Stanford. While his teammate Michael Wilson was doing work. He couldn't separate. He was stuck on the DBs. He couldn't really separate. And when he kind of got the ball in his hands, he didn't come down with catches all the time. So got to check that hands and the separation at the next level. Separation is the most important things, like Drew said, other than catching the football. And he did bad in both of those categories. Also, Jake Andrews, he just kept on getting beat time after time. I think technique goes a long way with him. I really tried him in a couple of different positions, but it wasn't working. And Ronnie Hickman, I think he was only there for one day. I'm not sure. Maybe he was injured himself, but he didn't look comfortable in coverage. So also had to go on the losers list. And Incoom, this is a guy, the actual game tape in the season, it looked pretty okay, but the Senior Bowl, he didn't really put it together. So, it'll be interesting to see how he does in this draft process.
All right. So there you have it. Obviously, Drew and I weighed in, but these are Headley's winners and losers from the 2023 Senior Bowl for the national team. Let's move over to the American team before we get into Lance Zierlein's mock draft. And Headley, again, we're going to start with the winners. Right at the top, you got Eric Gray of Oklahoma and Tank Dell, who turned a lot of heads in the one-on-one drills from Houston, the FBS leader in receiving yards.
Yeah, I thought Tank Dell was, excellent separation all day. He's one of those quick twist slot guys. He led the nation in receiving yards, so he got game. But everyone always says about these guys, these drills are made for him to win. And at the next level, when a defender get hands on you and get more physical with you, are you going to be able to separate? Are you going to be a one-trick pony, or are you going to put the whole game together? So that's something to watch with Tank Dell. But in the practices, he balled each and every time in these one-on-one reps. On the channel, on the YouTube channel, general manager. And then Eric Gray, I'm going to say this. He struggled as a pass protector. So, I don't know if he's a big winner. He's a winner on the list because of what he did catching the football, running the football. I just thought he was just explosive. His lower half is really built. I think you said he was a little Devontae Freeman in his game.
Yeah.
So he won that aspect.
The shiftiness. Absolutely. Yeah.
But pass protection, he's not going to get on the field protecting his quarterback like that.
Gotcha. Drew, your thoughts on Dell in particular?
Bo was nasty, bro. I mean, he was nasty. It was between Dell and Wilson, who was going to be the nastier guy, and Dell just a little bit more nasty, man. When again, I talk about when you talk about the receiver position, can you separate? and he probably had the most separation of all the receivers in terms of just, it didn't matter the type of corner that he was going against, whether they're big, long, fast, strong, didn't matter. It was all nasty. It was all the same. It was rinse and repeat. He was a fun watch. And if you watch those one-on-ones, man, down in the comment section, his name is all over it, bro.
Yeah, Deldon didn't play in the game or the third practice.
He
He
need
had
to,
kind of
bro.
he sewn it up by that point. But
No.
I will say the one rep he didn't win, defensive back got his hands on him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, something to watch.
You know, yeah, yeah. I mean, I get it. He can kind of put you in that spin cycle, but a crafty defensive back that's able to kind of use their length in order to control him at the line of scrimmage is ultimately how you mitigate all of his explosiveness and route running prowess. So definitely something to watch. I just don't see many guys with the confidence, with the technique to effectively jam receivers at the line of scrimmage these days. So I believe Tank Dell will be just fine, and he certainly helped himself. Moving on, we got Zach Pickens from South Carolina, Tyjae Spears, running back from Tulane, Julius Brents, very big, long corner from Kansas State, Darius Rush, perhaps the most impressive defensive back from the week outside of Sidney Brown, and then Aubrey Miller from Jackson State. I want to start with Aubrey Miller, Headley. Your thoughts on that particular individual?
Oh, this guy, man. I kind of fell in love with him through this week, man. The practices, I thought he showed a more athleticism than I thought he had coming into the week. But this guy's a physical downhill thumper. You saw it in the game when you could actually hit. In practices he couldn't really hit and show that
Right, right.
physicality. But in the game, man, he was headhunting out there. And the new age, the league. It's a passing league, but it's kind of reverting a little bit back. They're going to put a fullback in there. We try to run it down teams' throat, especially in December playoff times. That's what teams want to do. And you get a guy like Aubrey Miller to come up there and stick. I think he's going to be very valuable at the next level. So, really love Aubrey Miller. Who else? Darius Rush was just the technique. He was kind of a guy like Bennett, but he did it a little bit better than Bennett, where he was in hit pockets all day long, just affected the pass every single rep. And you got Brent's a long corner. Tyjae Spears, I think he won MVP of the Senior Bowl practices, I believe,
Yeah.
by his
Yeah.
peers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he watching the tape before he entered, I was really impressed with him, his game. But against upper competition in the Senior Bowl, I think he showed his pass catching, his burst, the juice, man, to explode and take it to the house. He showed that all week at Senior Bowl. And Zach Pickens, a guy that I love, man. It's the twitchy, physical guy. It affects the quarterback from the middle of the field, man. The quickest way to the quarterback is right down the middle, and Pickens is going to be there all day.
Rush was really impressive. What kind of jumped out at me with him was just the technique, just the overall technique, right? And the way that the defensive backs were deployed at South Carolina is interesting. Those guys don't play a full, bevy of snaps. Even Cam Smith, who was considered by some a first round prospect, right? So that I found interesting. But just he was able to jump routes, and then nobody got their hands on the ball more than Darius Rush. He came down with several interceptions during one-on-ones, let alone 11 on 11, 7 on 7. So that was really impressive. But he was reading the hips. He was reading the hips of the receivers. You know what I mean? He was looking for tells in terms of routes, and he was jumping on everything. He was squatting on certain things. I would have liked to see guys get a little bit more vertical on him throughout the one-on-ones in particular, see how he adjusts. But he certainly was not. There may have been some guessing earlier in the week, but as the week progressed, he was definitely reading the hips and using proper technique to get his hands on the football. So impressive stuff. I wanted to pose the question that Derek asked. Do you think Jake Andrews can move inside the guard? Now, of course, this is talking about the national team. He mentions that those McVay offensive lines like to convert tackles to guards, and frankly, some collegiate offensive tackles fare better as guards at the NFL level for whatever reason.
You're talking about the I mean,
Troy.
From Troy. They I don't think they even put him out there to tackle the entire time.
Right.
Senior Bowl. I think it was center and both left and right.
That's how they view him. That's how they view him. That's how the NFL views him.
You can't not look at him and think you can't look at him and think he's a tackle. Like he has to play inside. He doesn't have any other choice, in my opinion. He's just gonna have to get stronger. He's gonna have to use his hands. It almost looked like he wasn't ever ready for someone to put hands on him, is what it looked like. I don't know. It was strange, man. It wasn't good. I'm gonna leave it there.
Leave it there.
Yeah, leave it there.
So Andrew's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
Still a work in progress, but definitely a guard. All right. A few more winners here. We have Osiris Torrance of UF, Darnell Wright, Tennessee, Matthew Bergeron. So a trio of offensive linemen there. And actually you finish it with offensive linemen. The last
All
five
offensive line.
Yeah.
include John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota, really impressive center, and Steve Avila, guard from TCU. Hadley, your thoughts on these players?
Yeah, I thought this was the most impressive position group in all of the Senior Bowl was the offensive line. I think we got some first round talent here, some really good day two guys. I thought Osiris Torrance, he did exactly what I saw on tape. Never allowed a sack at the University of Florida or Louisiana before. In his whole collegiate career, he never allowed a sack, and it was status quo for him. Man, is the strength, the anchor. For a big guy, he can move to the second level. So I love Osiris Torrance's game. I think he's a first-round talent. Might be one of the first interior offensive linemen off the board. Also, John Michael Schmidt. I think he's moving up boards. I think he could also push for that first interior offensive line off the board. It's just the movement ability, the ability to get to the second level in a zone scheme. I think he's picture perfect for that scheme.
Right.
Also showed some anchor too. That was a question mark for me coming into the Senior Bowl, and I thought he held up well there. Steve Avila, I think he surprised me the most out of this group. Just showing physicality and nastiness, rep after rep. Not much guys got around him or through him. And then we got Bergeron and Darnell Wright. Darnell Wright, the big right tackle. He loves to get hands on opponents. He's physical. He likes to attack. Offensive line, you got a couple of different sets. You got the longer sets where you go all the way back, but I think he's made for that quick set. Get your hands on him. Get physical right away. He doesn't want to get the contact. He wants to give the contact. Darnell Wright is, and then Matthew Bergeron. He's a guy that I had question marks previously coming in, and I think he checked some of those boxes for me going against strength and length all week. So all of these guys, they impressed, man. This was the most impressive group in the whole Senior Bowl.
Drew, John Michael Schmidt's a better prospect than Tyler Linderbaum?
Yeah. So I think Linderbaum is a more athletic center, but John Michael Schmitz, man, he different, bro. He's different, bro. He's wider, bigger, stronger. He can move too. He's athletic too. But he's just. I think he's the entire package at center. I know center obviously is usually a smaller player inside, and that's kind of what Linderbaum was or is. And he's actually as far as I know, he's had a fantastic season this past season. But John Michael Schmitz just gives you a little bit more oomph at the position at center.
On mute, talking on mute. Let's jump into the losers from the American team, and it's a relatively short list here. We have Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State, Byron Young, the edge from Tennessee, Eku Leota from Auburn, Nick Saldivaria from Old Dominion, and Cameron Latu from Alabama. And Drew, among the quote unquote losers, Senior Bowl losers from the American team, according to Headley, who do you think disappointed the most?
Probably it's between Xavier Hutchinson and Byron Young, and I'm going to go with Byron Young. When you watch tape the previous year, and I'm watching him, and I'm saying, okay, this is a guy that I'm gonna key on come the season, and I want to watch and see if there is something, if there are things that he's going to improve on. One of the biggest things for me was a secondary pass rush move. Most of the time he could win with. He's very good with playing games up front. He has that timing, that pace, that variation when it comes to that. But and sometimes he can beat you straight with his speed and burst off the edge. But if it don't work, he's dead to rights. And that happened time after time after time after time. Didn't matter if it was team. Didn't matter if it was individual. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. One-on-ones, it didn't matter. He just didn't win because he just didn't have it. And you could tell he was pressing because he was sometimes he come really, really high, get killed. Sometimes he go really low, get put in the ground. He just didn't have it, man. You could tell he was thinking through, as he was attacking the offensive lineman, it just wasn't working out for him, man. So, I think he needs to get with somebody, to teach him some things and just add some tools to his tool shed, man, or to his toolbox, excuse me.
Yeah, no secondary move. to your point, when the initial bull rush or the speed or the inside rip or whatever the case may be didn't work, there was no plan B. There was nothing to chain that initial move with in order to actually finish. So yeah, I was a little disappointed in Byron Young, guy that I really liked on tape at Tennessee. I got to go back to the tape. Got to go back to the tape after seeing the way he performed and see how exactly he won. You know what I mean? To see whether or not we are looking at an issue in terms of just a sheer lack of secondary and tertiary pass rush moves, or perhaps he just didn't have a good week. We got to see. We got to revisit the tape to confirm. Headley, walk us through the Senior Bowl losers, guys that really didn't help themselves, may have cost themselves a little money.
Yeah, Cameron Latu. I just thought he didn't hold on to the ball. I know he had some of those same issues at Alabama, but some balls that he should have caught just slipped through his hands. I think he got to get stronger hands. Nick Saldiveri, he just kept on getting beat all week long. He was like, is that the guy from North Carolina or Old Dominion? It was Old Dominion. He was the guy getting beat because they had the light blue helmet out there. And then Drew talked about Young and Xavier Hutchinson. I thought for me personally, this was the biggest disappointment for me. I don't think he had like a terrible week, but coming into the week, I thought he was one of the better receivers coming into this class. He was a Biletnikoff finalist. He balled at Iowa State, but it's just the separation wasn't there consistently with him. I think he dropped a couple passes also. Maybe it was just a bad week. He's a guy that I could see that maybe he's better than what the week showed. I think that he could probably potentially be a good fit, in the NFL. But Senior Bowl week, he just didn't have it.
If I remember correctly, he mentioned that he felt like he was knocking off some rust. So that lag between obviously his last game and of course the Senior Bowl, he wasn't as sharp as he'd like to be. And to your point, I thought as the week went on, you could see the confidence growing a little bit more and more incrementally. It wasn't a huge night and day performance, complete 180, but he got a little bit better each day, I thought. So yeah, I think Xavier Hutchinson, had some things to prove, even though there's quality film of him, and he didn't necessarily capitalize. So we'll see how he tests. We'll see how the remainder of the pre-draft process fares for him.